Over the weekend, I talked to a number of Steelers fans just in different situations, and every single one of them asked me about the quarterback situation. And every time I said, I think right now the easy answer is Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. But I think that changes at some point, and I have a theory to when it does. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they are sitting pretty with their roster right now. There are plenty of moves to be made, plenty of moves I expect to be made here shortly. And with names like Joe Mixon and even bigger Nick Chubb popping up as potential cap casualties, there will be questions flying all over the place about, oh, do the Pittsburgh Steelers go to pick up this superstar or that superstar or so on and so forth? And most of the time, the answer is no. When it comes to the quarterback situation, you look at that situation and you say, right now, if I had to predict, if I had to guess who the Steelers' starting quarterback was in week 1 of the 2024 season, the answer is Kenny Pickett. And I don't think there is any question that most of us here believe that the answer is Kenny Pickett. If you had to take a guess at a number 2 or somebody who was going to also be on the roster, that guess would be Mason Rudolph, obviously. But there are reports flying all over the place, and people that I have spoken to who have some knowledge of the situation on both hands that say that maybe all the reports flying all over the place aren't as accurate or have as much potential as we want to believe. That maybe the report saying that Mason Rudolph wants out and a fresh start and is looking for a bunch of money and so on and so forth isn't that accurate. Maybe the Steelers being ginormous fans of Justin Fields and they are all in on going to get a splash isn't that accurate. And maybe where they sit right now is only the beginning, because this is a long offseason with a lot of decisions. And when those decisions get made, the Steelers are going to have to adjust. As Mike Tomlin always says, we have a plan, but we will be soft on our feet. I believe that's what he says. For a guy who sits in his press conferences every Tuesday, there's a lot of Tomlinisms that I like to say that I could memorize by heart, but there's too many maybe to do so. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. Currently, Kenny Pickett is the only quarterback on the roster. The Pittsburgh Steelers are hoping that Mason Rudolph returns, and they're going to offer him a contract. They're going to try to work with this guy and say, hey, look, you should come back. You should return. You will get an opportunity to compete for the starting job. According to Jerry Dulac, the organization is split 50-50 on who they believe the starting quarterback should be, whether or not that's Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph. If that's how they feel, then at least he's got a 50% shot to come in here and earn his place and say, look, it doesn't matter where you were drafted. It matters about who gives you the best opportunity. There are people all over the place that say the Steelers should turn to Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph looked good. Why would you move on from this guy? Why would you not give him an opportunity to continue to grow after Art Rooney said that they don't believe that they've seen his ceiling yet? Makes a lot of sense. But Kenny Pickett is a first-round guy. He's a guy that they want to succeed. He's a guy that makes the most success for their future, or most sense for the success of their future if he does work out. But that's a big, giant question mark. Is he going to work out? You have no idea. So Mason Rudolph is option A. I think that remains to be seen. Option 2, probably Ryan Tannehill, I would say. Probably the name that everybody's sitting around going, yeah, that guy makes a lot of sense. The Steelers have a connection with him with Arthur Smith. Everybody's linking those two together. It makes, complete sense for them to feel like they could bring him in and do big things with him. I get it. This is where I think things change. Free agency is less than a month away, about a month away. At that moment, Mason Rudolph will have a decision to make whether or not he's going to head elsewhere or come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't expect it to be long before he signs. I don't expect him to be a name that sits around in the free agency market negotiating and waiting for the best opportunity. I think he's a guy that's going to grab on to the best place that he believes he has the biggest opportunity. with the best compensation, and he's going to head that way. That way. He's going to go to a team where everything aligned. All the stars are aligned in a place where he can succeed and turn this career into a starting caliber career. And there are people out there that say, I don't know if Mason Rudolph's good enough to start. I don't know if he's that dude. I don't know if other teams are going to view him as that dude. Maybe not. Maybe Mason Rudolph isn't that guy. But if he is, if there are teams that look at Mason Rudolph and say, he is our starting caliber guy, he is an option that we would like to bring in. We would like to look at him as a potential starter in 2024. And he says, hey, that's my best opportunity. He's going to go there. That's what he's going to do. And I don't expect that to take very long. I expect him to be a day one, day two signing in the open market immediately off the board, unless he's getting no offers. But I don't see that being the case, because if he has no offers, if there are no immediate traction, if there's nothing there that says Mason Rudolph's going to get a job elsewhere and he's going to get an opportunity elsewhere right off the bat, why would that come later? I don't think it would. I think at that point, he's not going to take a shot and say, oh, well, maybe something will come up and then my opportunity will present itself. At that moment, it makes total sense to say, I'm re-signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is my best opportunity. I'm not going to waste time and waste money because I'm holding out for something else. That's not the best move. I expect him to be a day one, day two signing. If he goes elsewhere, that's where things change for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's when everything gets interesting. And that, my friends, is when I believe that all the talk that everybody wants to shut down about Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields and all these big names, Russell Wilson's another one. I think that's when that arises. That's when you have a real conversation. That's when the Pittsburgh Steelers have a real conversation about whether or not they are going to make a splash with a quarterback. And it makes a ton of sense. That's when it makes the most sense. Right now, it's all talk. Right now, it's, well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have options. They want Mason Rudolph to be that guy. Well, they should go out and get this guy. They should go out and get this guy instead. That's how they should view things. It makes a lot of sense for them to sit here and say, Mason Rudolph is our option one. We're going to stick with our option one until it's no longer there. Then from that moment, you start to make decisions. Okay, well, everybody, including ourselves, believes that we are a quarterback away from a Super Bowl team, that we are a quarterback away from making the run and breaking the drought and everything, that we are a quarterback away from being a team on the rise. They're not going to sit around and say, oh, well, we'll take a shot on Kenny Picket and Ryan Tannehill and think those are our quarterbacks. I just don't think that's how they're going to operate. I don't think that's how they've shown us that that's how they're going to operate this offseason. I think that they've said everything and laid it all out and said, look, we want to win. We're tired of not winning. We have a sense of urgency. We understand that the quarterback position is that important and that we are struggling that much at it and that we need to change things around. We understand that we are wasting careers for Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. We get all that. I think that's where the Steelers stand. They went out and got a splash hire at offensive coordinator. They changed their quarterbacks coach, their wide receivers coach. There is changes everywhere within this team. You're telling me that if Mason Rudolph leaves, that if he says, I'm going elsewhere, at that moment, they're just going to settle and say, this is it, we're fine, no big deal? I don't believe so. I think at that moment, that's when things change. That's when the mindset switches. That is when the Pittsburgh Steelers begin hunting for a big-name quarterback. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to get to that situation, and I don't blame them. I think if they believe in Mason Rudolph, then they should believe in Mason Rudolph. But all the talk about the Steelers aren't looking for a number one, they aren't looking to pay for a number one, they aren't looking to make a splash, they probably aren't. Not right now, at least. But this offseason's very long, and it's going to change, and circumstances are going to arise where they are going to have to look themselves in the mirror and say, are we going to protect Kenny Pickett in 2024, or are we going to make a splash and try to win a Super Bowl? That's what we're going to try to do. And I don't think that any quarterback outside of Kirk Cousins is a guy that you're bringing in here looking at and saying, well, that's a big splash. That's a big, definite, oh my gosh. Because you give up a second or a third round pick for Justin Fields, I get it. Everybody's talking about, oh, you got to pay him mega bucks. If you pay him $25 million over the next 2 years, essentially that's just paying a big price tag for a backup quarterback, worst case scenario. Something that they've already done. Something that when you are paying two rookie quarterbacks or two rookie contract quarterbacks, you're able to do that with ease, with no questions whatsoever. So if Kenny Pickett still works out and he's your dude, he's your dude. You don't have to stress about it. Kirk Cousins is an immediate starter that you're going to pay a boatload of money to. I get that one. Russell Wilson, I don't know what he's going to look for because I don't know what people are going to be willing to give him. And if it's not a lot, you're in the same situation where you're just going to pay a little bit of money and expect this guy to come in here and be that dude. But you're really only expecting him to be that dude for a year, and hopefully Kenny Pickett turns into something bigger a year after that. I just don't see the major commitment or the major issues with the big name quarterback. I just don't. Outside of Kirk Cousins, obviously. But I think Kirk Cousins immediately makes you a Super Bowl team. Immediately makes you a Super Bowl team. And a team that I think people are going to look at and say that's the favorite to win the Super Bowl. I really, really do. The Steelers are a quarterback away. Right now, they're looking at Mason Rudolph. That's not going to change until he leaves. And then once he goes somewhere else, if that happens, and that's a big if, but if that happens, that is when all this talk that everybody is labeling crazy, everybody is saying, all the media is saying, it would never happen. I can't believe that they would do this. That's when it becomes real. Because right now, it is way too early in the process to change your plan A. But once that plan A is gone, you got to go to plan B. And I just have a hard time thinking that plan B is just, well, we're going to give up now, and that's it. That's not how the Steelers roll. And that doesn't seem to be how they're going to roll this offseason.